In Guatemala, the former First Lady Sandra Torres Casanova, candidate of the Conservative Party National Unity for Hope, and the leftist Bernardo Arévalo de León, the candidate for Seed Movement, emerged as the main candidates to face each other in the second round. In Greece, Conservative leader Kyriakos Mitsotakis won the national elections with a clear majority, allowing his party to govern alone. In Sierra Leone, the opposition party denounced an attack by the armed forces on its headquarters following the general elections. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. And now we begin with the news. In Guatemala, on a tense election day marked by complaints and some actions of violence, the former First Lady Sandra Torres Casanova and the candidate of the Conservative Party National Unity for Hope and leftist Bernardo Arévalo de León, candidate of Seed Movement, emerged as the main candidates to face each other in the second round. With over 92% of the votes counted and more than 15% of the ballots, right-led candidate Torres Casanova, had a lead. The biggest surprise of the day was the leftist Bernardo Arévalo de León, the candidate of the Seed Movement, who emerged in the heat of the anti-corruption demonstrations of 2015 and who will compete in the second round for the country's presidency after obtaining over 12% of the votes. Both candidates are far from the 50% needed to win the presidential race, so both will face each other on August 20th in the final round. Of the 9.3 million Guatemalans called to the polls, about 40% did not vote. In the 2019 election, abstention was 38% in the first round and 58% in the second round. Also, the Supreme Electoral Tribunal of Guatemala reported incidents in 5 municipalities, mainly related to alleged voter harassment and police intimidation through the use of tear gas against the population. The Supreme Electoral Tribunal announced that due to the violence in the town of San José del Golfo, the elections in that municipality were suspended.
The board of the Department of Guatemala decides and informs us that with the same objective of protecting the life and physical integrity of the people, it is better to suspend elections in that place. They also gave a press conference about it, and indeed, in San José del Golfo, Guatemala, there are no elections today. There were 4 electoral precincts and a total of 24 polling stations. That is what was suspended for this time. It will be on to the second round when the elections will take place there.
Likewise, the magistrate of the Supreme Electoral Court, Gabriel Aguilera, condemned the incidents that occurred in San José del Golfo.
Regarding the issue of San José del Golfo, first of all, as the President said, we condemn these events. Remember that the members of the voting and municipal electoral boards are citizens, so we call on all our citizens to respect their Guatemalan brothers and sisters who are guarding their vote, and that we do not resort to these acts.
In this context, voters and members of the Guatemalan police and military clashed in San José del Golfo amid allegations the mayor unlawfully brought people from other districts to vote for President Alejandro Giammattei's ruling party. We must remember that the electoral authorities announced the cancellation of the election day in the municipality after the violent incidents. There were also press reports of disturbances in San Martín Zapotitlan, Retalhuleu department, and due to the alleged movement of voters.
We are tired of the mayor bringing people from elsewhere. He pays 1,000 quetzales per vote. No, we don't want any more corruption. We are tired of it.
The president of the municipal electoral body didn't have the guts to tell the election officials that he was going to bring people from other places. Why? So those 92 who were going to come will vote for the ruling party.
On the other hand, the presidential candidate Sandra Torres reiterated her complaints about the irregularities registered during the electoral event.
We continue to see a very contaminated electoral process, with a little control, with little presence of the authorities. And our question is, well, where's the Ministry of the Interior? Where's the presence of the authorities, of the officials, who are responsible for this process?
And moving to other topics, with a march and rally in front of the White House, a week of solidarity with Cuba that has been expressed in more than 30 cities in the United States and other parts of the world concluded on Sunday. Take Cuba off the list of state sponsors of terrorism is the name of the campaign that animates this new wave of questioning of the policies of the current administration of the Democrat Joe Biden towards the Caribbean island. Activist and professor Carlos Lasso, who traveled from Seattle, emphasized that representatives of more than 100 solidarity organizations should it out loud so that President Joe Biden will listen while that Cuba be taken off the list of terrorist countries, that the blockade be lifted and bridges of love be built.
We are here today in front of the White House to denounce a crime. This crime has been committed for more than 60 years. This genocide has been inflicted by the United States government against the people of Cuba. Right now, because this genocide, people in Cuba are suffering. Families lack food and medications. Right now, children are denied and dying in Cuba because the U.S. blockade. To make things worse, almost 3 years ago, the Trump administration had Cuba in the list of countries who support terrorism. The addition of Cuba to this list is one of the most evil acts that the United States have done.
Let's take a short break. But remember, you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find the news in different formats, news, updates, and more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back. On Sunday, conservative leader Kyriakos Mitsotakis won Greece's national elections with a clear majority, clinching a second term with what he called a strong mandate that will allow his party to govern alone. Mitsotakis' New Democracy Party obtained over 40% of the vote, well ahead of the leftist Syriza party, led by the former Premier Alexis Tsipras, which came in under 18%, according to over 90% of the ballots counted. The margin is the widest for the Conservative in almost 50 years. The re-elected leader said the people gave them a safe majority and major reforms will proceed rapidly, adding that the ambitious targets for a new term that could transform the nation. Opposition leader Alexis Tsipras accepted defeat and the election results and described them as a negative for society and for democracy.
We have suffered a serious electoral defeat. However, I believe that the electoral result is mainly negative for society and for democracy. The election of 3 far-right parties to parliament, one of which has serious fascist connections, in combination with the majority of Mr. Mitsotakis, it's a negative development.
The Russian city of Rostov-on-Don, the scene of the attempted armed mutiny by members of the Wagner Group, is calm after all the troops left the territory. Hours after an agreement reached with the group's leader through the mediation of the Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko, the Russian President Vladimir Putin issued a decree to normalize the country's traffic routes. On the other hand, the situation in the center of Rostov-on-Don had already come back to normal by Saturday midnight, and the traffic on Budinovsky Avenue was fully restored. The Russian emergency services also confirmed that the fire at the oil depot in Voronezh was completely extinguished. For their part, Rostov-on-Don residents expressed their relief that the situation had resolved itself after hours of tension strained the town.
I personally think that it's better to settle things on the battlefield, not to come to the southern city, a quiet, peaceful town, to settle things with tanks. I think this is not right. They came in with guns. It could have been so much worse.
Yesterday, when I found out the news, I was, of course, very upset. I spent the whole day at home. I did not go out because they said that it was better not to go out. I had been following the news all day and was really worried, so I'm glad everything turned out well.
In the United Kingdom, more than 10,000 citizens signed a petition calling on the government to hold a referendum to cease support for Ukraine. The request states that the government of London intervened in the conflict in Ukraine without a mandate from its citizens. In this order, the text states that the population is suffering from the financial consequences of the conflict, such as the increase in energy prices, the cost of living, and cuts in public services. The British government is forced to respond to an initiative that is supported by more than 10,000 people. The petition must be debated in Parliament if it reaches 100,000 signatures. Now we move on to other topics. A new attack by Ukrainian troops caused one death and several wounded in the Russian region of Donetsk. The mayor of the city reported the explosion killed an 18-year-old man and wounded other 5 citizens in a crowded area close to a shopping mall and public offices. The Joint Center for Control and Coordination of the Ceasefire and the Stabilization of the Demarcation Line, the JZCZ, stated that the Ukrainian forces attacked the Kievitsky district from a light multiple missile launcher system mounted on a HIMARS-type military truck. And Russia says it has repelled new offensives by Ukrainian forces in 4 areas on the front line.
24 hours, Ukraine's armed forces have continued to attempt offensive actions in the Donetsk, Krasny Liman, Yuzhno-Donetsk, and Zaporizhzhia directions. In the Donetsk direction, in the area of the city of Artemovsk, with competent and courageous actions, the defending units of southern groups of forces repelled 10 enemy attacks in a day.
We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at TeleSUR English, and there you will be able to rewatch our interviews, the top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. We have a final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. In Sierra Leone, the opposition party on Sunday denounced an attack by the armed forces on its headquarters following the general elections. The leader of the All People's Congress, Samura Kamara, the main opponent of President Julius Maada Bio in the election, said on Twitter that bullets had been fired at his party's headquarters in the capital and confirmed that a woman had died in the incident. On Saturday, some 3.4 million people were called to choose between 13 candidates for the presidential election in a rematch of the 2018 election between Mr. Bio and Mr. Kamura. According to the Election Commission, vote counting continues and results are expected within 48 hours of the count. Damascus and Moscow's air forces cooperate in coordinated strikes against terrorist positions in northeastern Syria. According to local media, in the last hours, the Russian and Syrian aviation carried out more than 30 raids against terrorist strongholds in Idlib province, about 350 kilometers northwest of this capital. The sources indicate that aviation targeted positions of the radicals in the vicinity of the cities of Jezder al-Zuhur and Ariha. The information details the destruction of weapon and ammunition depots, as well as a command center of the Junta for the Liberation of the Levant, registered on the international terrorism list. On Sunday, clashes continue between the Sudanese army and the Rapid Support Forces, the RSF. The RSF had announced the seizure of the Reserve Police headquarters, while the Sudanese army bombed the RSF concentrations nearby. The latter announced that its forces responded to the attack and inflicted heavy losses on the RSF. In addition to bombing RSF concentrations east of Al-Mansihia Bridge, east of Khartoum, and in Halfaya to the north, and destroying a number of combat vehicles. The Sudanese army similarly bombed RSF concentrations south of Omdurman and west of the capital, announced the shooting down of 2 army planes, and reported that the RSF is suffering from an acute shortage of food, arms, and ammunition due to the blockade. And on Saturday, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi began a 2-day state visit to Egypt. It is the first time it happens since 1997, and it comes to highlight growing bilateral ties. According to local media, Modi and the Egyptian counterpart Mustafa Madbouli held talks on strengthening bilateral relations and agendas in the presence of senior government officials from both countries. Modi is scheduled to hold talks with President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi on Sunday, during which the two countries will sign a set of mutually beneficial memorandums. Also on Sunday, Modi visits the historic mosque Al-Hakim in Islamic Cairo, recently renovated with the help of the India-based Dawoodi Bohra community. Now we move on to other topics. In Chile, heavy rains affecting the central zone have left at least 2 people dead and 3 missing. According to the president, Gabriel Boric, updated numbers now speak of about 419 people, while 1,002 remain unprotected in the region of Valparaiso. Among the missing, there is a firefighter who was helping with rescue works in an area affected by the floods. On Saturday night, Boric visited affected families in Talagante and spoke about the current delicate situation in the 4 regions south of the capital. The Minister of the Interior, Carolina Toja, announced the degree of emergency state governing all the regions from Valparaiso to Biobío due to the floods and river overflowings. The measure will allow the authorities to quickly mobilize special resources destined to repair infrastructural and housing damages. In Peru, the National Service of Meteorology and Hydrology issued an orange alert for low temperatures registered in 12 departments of the southern highlands region. According to the weather forecast, temperatures are expected around -6 degrees Celsius in the central highlands and values below -16 degrees Celsius in localities at 4,000 meters above sea level in the southern highlands. In addition, gusts of wind are expected with speeds close to 40 kilometers per hour, low cloudiness, and increased daytime temperatures. In view of the warning, the National Institute of Civil Defense, INDECI, recommended taking the necessary measures to take care of health, such as avoiding exposure to sudden changes in temperature, as well as covering the head, face, and mouth to prevent cold air from entering the lungs. On Sunday, Uruguayan authorities reported a decrease in the freshwater reservoir of the San Severino Dam that supplies the city. In the midst of the water emergency established due to the persistent drought, the San Severino Dam stores only 2,179,283 cubic meters of water out of a capacity of 70 million. The lack of rainfall causes the flow to continue decreasing. According to a report issued on Friday, it was at 2,401,000 2,596 million cubic meters, and on Thursday at 2,616,725 million cubic meters, all historical milestone downward. In view of the need for water resources, the Ministry of Public Health approved increasing the sodium values of the vital liquid by 420 milligrams per liter. The health agency warned that although it is a drinkable water, it is no potable water, so it recommended pregnant women and people with chronic diseases to buy bottled water instead. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.